Scion's so great. Yeah. Yeah, we don't have this geek and sundry people making songs for us. We're for role players. That's what we do. Social media. Who even watches that? Nobody. That's what I'm saying. Right?
Over 1,000 people.
You know what, Ian? Don't give me your data points and your research. I go with my gut.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I design games. With my gut.
So you can tell the quality.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I hope you didn't eat coffee. If you go with your gut.
Oh, trust me, my stomach knows whenever I travel, and it is pretty much like an EPA Superfund site. It is. It's the worst. These guys are just grimacing around me. We all know why.
Neall.
What?
Meredith knows what we're talking
So
about.
I have two sign riders here. Do I have a third? I have no third sign rider. Not around here. Okay. Yeah. We have a signed character sheet. It's a save and pass around the room. It's a beta sheet, not complete. I really like them to do a yeah. How do you guys? All right, show of hands. Who likes? You guys all play tabletop, obviously. You're here. So, how do you guys feel about layout style character sheets? Landscape is what I mean. Layout, a character sheet on the side. Like, how do you guys feel about that? Anyone? You don't like it?
I like this.
And that's you.
I kind of like them on their side.
Yeah.
They fit better on the table.
Don't you find?
We were
Yeah,
sitting around the
absolutely.
table that the original.
Yeah, they fit better. They're rich.
Exactly.
Because the original edition of Trinity had landscape.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? Yeah, so Rich is precedent. We're gonna do sign character sheets, landscape. That's what we're gonna do.
Or maybe not.
Someone said
Yeah.
if they made that. Or maybe not. Make a score.
Hey, has everybody got brochures? Both of the regular old Onyx Path brochures and the new Storypath system?
I don't have them.
Hey, pass them up.
I will pass them.
Man, those mechanics look so much better in brochure form.
Would you what who?
They look so much better in brochure form.
That hardbound.
Like,
That
it's
hardbound.
weird, it's like they look like they function better when they're in a glossy brochure than they did when they were in.
You know what? Let's be innovative. Let's do origami character sheets.
Oh, yeah.
Character sheets you can only read when you fold them properly.
This one is a Leviathan
Yep.
from Trinity. It's really nice.
Two each. See, we could do a Leviathan, the jump ship, and then a Leviathan, the aberrant.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. See?
All Leviathan.
Yes.
All right.
Maybe we'll do like the Nautilus as like
Yeah.
all of us have a mechanical Leviathan.
So thank you all for coming. This panel is about Onyx Path's, I guess we would say, special properties, the ones that we're really working on as our own sort of thing. We have Ian Watson, who is the Uber Trinity Continuum developer. He's overseeing what you would expect for the rebirth of the Trinity property, which is Trinity Aeon, and Trinity Aberrant, and Trinity Adventure, plus all the other possibilities that go into the idea of it being a continuum of settings for that. We have Neall, with double L's, Raemonn Price, who is our Scion 2nd edition developer. And
SCION.
correct.
Oh my God! How many times have we
Battle
had,
of the
we had such an
PSIONs.
arduous
And of course, we're very excited about Scion in particular here because once we get back home from this convention, we're going to be setting up the Scion Kickstarter and hopefully have that ready and going at the end of the month. So very excited about that because we've been wanting to do this for so long, and we'll have a whole story about the Storypath system and why it's taken long and why it's cool when we talk a little bit later. And then Scott Holden, who is the developer for Scarred Lands, which is classic fantasy setting that White Wolf came up with during the Die 20 craze. Our creature collection was the first of the properties to come out for D&D 3rd edition that was not Wizard of the Coast, and to beat their monster manual out because we're kind of dicky like that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we are.
And we had the opportunity to purchase that from CCP. went into that with Stewartwick and his nocturnal media company. As sort of, since both Stu and I had worked on Scarlands, he had done a lot of writing for it. It was just something we wanted to work on together again. So it's 2.5 properties sitting here, different setting game lines.
So you know what's really interesting now is that the third edition of Exalted just came out, which is neat. But I always feel like Exalted's systemic and kind of thematic progenitors were Aberrant and Scarred Lands. You see a lot of those, like, and Kindred Thieves, but you see like a lot of those things going into Exalted. So I don't know.
I don't know how to time down. I have to look back on that.
Yeah.
Because Exalted had a really long development cycle, like more than we normally did, because as we were getting ready to say, hey, maybe we could go live with this and start selling it, D&D 3rd edition came out and everybody wanted to talk about that instead of a new cool little fantasy game. So the other thing is that if you're an Exalted fan or you have Exalted questions, I will do what I can to answer them. I will jot them down and see if I can get the developers to answer them, and we'll post them online. But both John and Holden were unable to attend this Gen Con this year, even though they had planned, because Holden's mother passed away after a very long illness. So he's dealing with that at this point.
You can ask me Exalted questions, but I will lie about the answers.
I may know a few of them, but there's like somebody online asked, is there going to be more War Striders? And
Yes.
I can answer that. It's going to be all War Striders.
Yeah, all War Striders all the time.
Yeah.
We've given up the class.
Yeah, I think Exalted's future as a mech fighting game is really where we want to go with the property.
So that's the basic intros, and these are the people that know the stuff, and I think would you guys want to say a little something before we take questions, or would you just like to go?
This has been a long and painful road for the Scion Trinity, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah.
It's a train coming at you.
Yeah.
But it's a light. So when we had the opportunity to buy Scion and all Trinity from CCP, who had, if you remember, merged with White Wolf and was not really doing anything with them. And when I wanted to do Onyx Path, one of the things that made Onyx Path possible was that they were willing to sell these things that I had spent an awful lot of time working on back in the day. So.
Is this Spellcraft?
It is.
It said Grand Central.
Sorry. 4 Grand Centrals. So,
Good luck.
but thanks for walking right into the front of it. Like, what is that?
Do you want me to walk over to Spellcraft and just like wander in front?
And then kick it.
I got this, Rich.
I've been confused in these battles myself. So.
Yeah.
We're talking about being able to finally get these things and start bringing them back to life. But one of the things that both games suffer for in different ways was the system. And the system was never designed to accommodate god-level power, even demigod-level power in Scion, and it really started breaking down with Aberrant. Even though, it did level best with the mega ability to try to, come on, we can make this thing work. But since it was kind of bolted onto old storytelling, it was a little tough. Because we want to use bolted as kind of a husky sort of aggressive thing, but not necessarily effective. What happened was then I went to a few the developers we know, game designers that we know, and said, we need to come up with another system for both of these games that can go from guy in the street to a god. Give us moments, and so that kind of range was a pretty aggressive thing to ask for in a single system. I think looking at what we've got, what Neall and the previous people who worked on this are capable of coming up with is pretty impressive and will scale to those levels. The other thing I guess about the Storypath system was that I really like the dice pool system. It's not just because I worked at White Wolf and everything like that. I really do think that for storytelling, it tends to make it abstract in a way that kind of engenders imagination and storytelling more so than other kinds of systems. And not necessarily worth arguing about, but that's kind of why I wanted to stick with that, and then yet not just do, hey, we're going to call this story Schmeller, and it's pretty much the same as Raemonn came up with years and years ago. So I want to go back to the roots of it. What makes a dice pool system really work? How does it scale? How do the numbers work? And we knew we had to do a big scale. And then how can we use it to actually push people towards more engagement, more storytelling, and still be able to say, it's a very simple resolution system. I mean, it's pretty simple to say, you need this many and this many, and you have that many dice you roll, and you got to beat this number. That's one of the reasons, one of the beautiful parts of storytelling and storytelling back in the day was that was a pretty easy thing for people to catch on to. It was not that obscure. And then continually put parts to that would enrich the experience for the more experienced people who really want to have a lot more play with, if I do this and this will happen, this will happen. So that was really our design goal, and it took us, what, 3 years?
Yeah. 3 years and 6 iterations.
Yes, and several project heads,
Oh, yeah.
as people came and went on the project and did what they could to it, and then had to, for various reasons, back off. And so finally Neall arrived as like with a bolt of lightning and came out of the earth and said, I think I can make this thing work. And got his team together and did it.
Dadgummit, we did.
So that is that's the origins of the Storypath system, and what we're kind of looking for it to do as when you sit down and use it at the table. I think this is pretty clear, and I think it's evocative of what goes on in it. You guys can let us know if after you read through this, it's like, well, this is as clear as mud. We have no clue. It doesn't seem like fun. Let us know, because this is kind of the premiere.
Because we would love to spend another year polishing the system because you don't like it.
So you never know until it hits public, whether you have been face down in this thing that you think is really, really awesome, but none of it makes sense until you actually get it out there and see how people play it.
Playtests have been pretty positive, though.
Yep.
You want me to tell them how the one yesterday?
Absolutely. Why don't you tell them how the one yesterday went?
So I playtested the game yesterday. Yeah, and it the Scion character creation took about 6 players. Took about an hour or so. You think?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, about an hour or so. Which is pretty fast. Everyone chose their stuff like that. Everything, we start with the core character concept, and actually everything, skills, attributes, everything flows from that. Rich came to me pretty early, and he was like, hey, why don't we call this a Storypath system? And I was like, well, Rich, there's nothing in there that's like about paths or anything. He's like, well, make something up. So I did.
Damn you.
It's gotta have paths. Gotta have paths in there. So the paths are basically pieces of a chronicle setting which characters interact with, and they're inherent to the character, and they're like facts that bolt a character into the setting. So actually, one guy even at the table even tried to be like, I want to be with the lone wanderer character. I'm like, oh, so like truck stop waiters, the like the little routes to town, that. And he's like, well, yeah, I guess so, because I'd be a loner and I'd be going through stuff. And he actually ended up like a horse with no name character. Sign up Poseidon, obviously, because horses. But he knew all these back roads, he knew everything, and we were going through the setting, and he knew like the back places through the city, and where like all the seedy mahjong bar like parlors were and everything. And he's like, "Oh, this is really cool." So you can try to make a loner character, but it's not going to work, because even they have connections in the setting, connections to people. And
Isolated, completely non-connected to anyone. No one is that way.
Yeah.
No one wants to play that, so.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to play a loner. Okay, sit over there by yourself. We'll play the game.
So that was one of the false design questions that used to get thrown around back in the day. Ken Cliff he was the worst one for this. I don't know if you guys remember Ken was the head of development at White Wolf. And he would come down and he'd say, this is a new game, and they pitched a new game, and Ken would say, why would I be this? Why would I be in this world? Why would I do this stuff? Why would I be this werewolf? I just want a werewolf that sits at the lake and fishes, because that's what Ken wanted to do. And I don't want to be involved with anybody, and why would I be involved with your thing? And it always came down to eventually, Ken, if you come to a game where you don't want to play with anyone, why don't you just go home? Like, why? There's a certain assumption that if you're going to be involved with this society of it, you're going to connect somehow, some way, even if it's some twist to it, so you feel a little more isolated or something.
Yeah. So going through the passive character generation forces you to define roles and forces you to define connections. And if we've condensed a lot of the stuff like the allies, contacts, mentor, resources, whatever that you kind of individually spelled out, they're just all folded into paths, every bit of them. And powers are granted through permissions to the path. So if you want to access like the werewolf power suite, you gotta have a path that basically says, I'm a werewolf. You can't just be like, oh yeah, I go fishing by the lake, and that, also I'm a werewolf. No, you gotta be like, it's gotta be part of your character. So I'll cut the long story short. Combat lasted really fast. They blew up the mooks and like that.
Oh, mooks, I thought you said blew up the moon.
No.
Which is possible.
Yeah.
No, the only moon in the game was at the end of the session when the sign of Dionysus caused the entire Yakuza clan to devolve into a gay orgy. Just this like 3-day-long mass of tattooed flesh. And then he used the social influence system to turn the Yakuza against their boss. So, because they all really liked him after that.
And they were exhausted.
Oh, yeah, they were exhausted. So, yeah. So, that's how that ended.
You never know what people are going to say at a con game.
No, I think it worked pretty well. We got to test out the social influence system. We got to use your social powers.
Yeah.
No, it worked. I think it was good. I said, I'm gonna seduce him. I'm like, all right, which one? All of them.
Dionysus, motherfucker.
Yeah, no, that's how it went.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for it. I'm really excited for how things are going. The system takes it kills a lot of storytellers' sacred cows. I was doing Dark Ages, V20 Dark Ages, and I was doing the Bali because I am such a huge fan of the Salubri. I was like, can I do the Bali too and drop in a bunch of hints that Salat sired the Bali? And the developer's like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, yeah, headcanon confirmed. So this is the awesome power you've given me, and I do not use it responsibly. But one of the things we were doing is I was going over the powers of Daimonium. And Daimonium is a really classic example of this in the old school development style. When Storyteller was first made, everyone plays on the same playing field, and NPCs are generated the same way PCs are. I mean, you might just assign dots, but their character sheets look the same, their stat blocks look exactly the same. And then you have their powers, their disciplines, their gifts, their whatever, exactly the same as the PCs. But the problem was Daimonium was never intended to be a PC usable power because nobody ever expected them to actually play the ball game.
Again, not real till people start playing it.
Yeah, and so you had this awkward structure where they had these powers that were really powerful but very singular use and were only really meant to throw bolts of dark energy at the actual player characters. But it was in the same structure. You could buy it as a PC, and it's like, well, but it's not and Matt Farland here, if I said the word balance, he'd screw up his face. But when I'm using it, I don't mean it in a white room situation of this power is slightly better than this power, so they're not balanced. I mean, PCs were never meant to use that power. And PCs, it didn't matter to them to use that power. So we divorce player powers and actual NPC powers. And the NPCs are built lightning fast, kind of through templates. That you have a group of stat pools with this, and they get little powers added onto it depending on who you are. It gets generated super quick. And they're not meant to be used by players, and they're not meant to that. And so PC Scion looks completely different from an enemy Scion. They're not built using the same rules. Because an enemy Scion is only going to be using a couple of very powerful tools out of their arsenal that the PC will and won't be. What other? Oh, we got rid of willpower too. There's no willpower in the game. You have.
Now explain why that's a good thing.
Yeah. So that's a good thing because we wanted a swinginess to it. And one of the things people really loved about Aberrant, and people also really loved about Scion, is giant handfuls of dice pools. But I played Exalted for years. I really cut my teeth writing systems for Exalted, and I played innumerable games over the last 15 years of it. I played it from the core book out, and I know what it's like to have a 22 dice that you're just throwing around as your normal pool. I know what that's like. And the first time you do it, you're like, this is great. The fifth time you do it, it's like, okay, yeah. The 50th time you do it, you're like, this is the worst. This is the absolute worst. So, yeah. Yeah. And it's like, oh yeah, and like some of the system designers were like, yeah, you throw 200 dice at this guy. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, do you know how many dice that actually is? So, like inexplicably, there's like one or two people who are always like, I love doing that. We did that every game, and everyone loved it.
It's tech.
I'm like, yeah, okay, all right, buddy, you do you.
But
You do
their arms are jacked though.
Yeah, but so we keep system pool sizes very small, and there's very few things that actually modify the size of your dice pool ever in the entire game. There's a couple want to hear, but there's very few things that do it. And instead, we rely on a scale mechanism that addresses how big your action is and what you're doing with it. And when you fail, well, all right, let me step back a minute. One of my writers, the system writers, who's actually sitting right there, Malcolm Shepard, he goes, so what do you think about the gambler's fallacy? And I'm like, is this conversation going to go anywhere? Because if it's not, I don't want to fall prey to the gambler's fallacy and think it'll go somewhere. It won't. So for those of you who don't know what the gambler's fallacy is, it's kind of related to the sunk cost fallacy, and it's the idea that you're playing a game of random chance, and you eventually think, well, my ship will come in. I'm due to win. Like, I'm supposed to win. And you see it literally all the time with gamblers, because they're like, well, I've lost 8 games in a row of slots, so next one I've got to win.
Yeah, the law of averages says that, I have a 1 in 10 chance. I've played 9 games, so the next one I'm winning.
Next one I'm going to win.
Yeah.
And that's not actually how it works.
Yeah.
That's not how it does. So Malcolm comes to me and he's like, so what if we made it work in this system? And I'm like, how are we going to do that? So momentum. Momentum is a resource generated by failure when you mess up. And we have both a kind of narrative failure that's very similar to the Chronicles of Darkness system, where you have these conditions on you, and every time they fuck with you in the game, you generate a point of momentum, and it goes into your little pool here, your momentum. And then every time you fail at a dice roll, you can choose to do a couple different things when you fail at a dice roll, which is another little hidden system innovation, or you can just say, just give me some momentum, and you get some momentum into your pool, and the pool slowly grows larger and larger and larger. And at certain points in the game, you can say, I'm going to spend momentum on this because it's something I really care about and it's something that's important to my character, and you just take the dice out of your pool, and that's what ups your dice pool. So you can go from throwing around like 6, 7 dice on a pool to going around and throwing like 10 or 12 or whatever. So that's every once in a while you get a big dice roll, and that itself is also modified by the scale system. So sometimes you get these radical peaks that come after you've failed a bunch of times.
Can you split it in pieces?
Yes, you can if you want to. You don't have to blow your whole pool at once, but you can.
So basically, it enables you to have opportunities to get in there and start, like willpower would raise it, but also on a narrative or on a story level to start influencing the story.
Yeah. If you fail enough times, your ship will come in. It's just whether or not you choose to make your ship come in before you fail enough times for it to make a difference, and that's the kind of balancing factor in the game.
But as I always emphasize, because I've sort of played enough of these games, I've walked into a game where it's just a rough day at work, and I promised we'd go play, and here we are. What do I need to roll? Just tell me what I need to roll. I can't even think about the story. I just need to know can I achieve my objective. This will still allow that. You don't have to be, I'm going to tell this great story, stuff like that. But it allows that, it enables that in, I think, a much more organic way than other dice pool systems that we've worked with in the past.
Oh yeah.
Let's take a break from Scion for a little bit and have our two friends here describe what's like. Scott, we did a Kickstarter for Scarlands. How did that go?
Kickstarter went very well. I think we were, about 80,000 or something?
We certainly
surpassed it by a large
We've got past what we wanted in order to do traditional print runs of Scarlands for both Pathfinder as a system and also D&D 5th. So both kinds of books are going to be in existence.
So we have the core book coming out for Pathfinder and for 5e. Then as part of the stretch goals, there was an old book in the original Scarred Lands that was called The Wise and the Wicked, which was sort of a who's who of the Scarred Lands. various NPCs and rulers from around the different nations. And so we made that into a series of stretch goals, and ultimately those were all filled. So we're reprinting that book as well, redoing that with 5e stats and Pathfinder stats. So that will be part of the stretch goals. And then we also have, I don't remember if the adventures were part of the stretch goal or not.
I think they were.
They were, okay. So we have a free adventure that's available online for both Pathfinder and 5e called the Gauntlet of Spirogos. You can get that on Drive the RPG.
We have some in the booth too.
Do we have the, okay.
For sale, the PDF version.
The PDF version is free, I'm sorry, yeah. The print version, of course, you could pay, but it's pretty much the print cost, it's cheap.
And then
So you can get that, and then we have 2 more adventures coming, which are the second and third books of that same adventure trilogy. So those will be those are in development right now as well. The Ring of Spirogos
And the
Dagger of Spirogos. Yeah.
And Spirogos being one of the I guess he was a
Titan, lesser Titan.
Lesser Titan, yeah. A Lesser Titan kind of made him up for this edition. It made sense to us that there were Titans and there would also be Lesser Titans versus just the monolithic Titan sort of thing. If there were Titan spawn, there's got to be something in that level there. And so he was was it Vangal? No, that's
Vangal killed him.
Yeah, Vangal killed him. And so this massive creature, but he had a few of these artifacts, and you start off finding out about those and then searching for them and recovering them. So pretty classic story set in the Scarlands, which if people are not familiar with it, we keep saying it, is it's a fantasy world where the gods and the Titans had a war, and humans were on various sides of that, but in the end it really didn't matter, because when gods and Titans fight, mountains get destroyed, and rivers change their courses. The gods won, and it's the gods who are they go around the alignment wheel. They won, and they basically either killed or imprisoned all the Titans. So there's I guess a fantastic post-apocalyptic feel, but not a,
Because the war was
Mad
only
Max.
about 150 years in the past, so it's still very recent.
So there's effects to it, and there's a place called the Blood Sea, and the reason why it's a red, blood-like ocean is the fact that they've imprisoned one of the Titans down at the bottom of the thing, and he continues to bleed. So it's got some good, classic
Delicious.
Nastiness that we were known. This was our version of Die 20, so we had a good time. And so we really just have it's another edition, but we haven't really gone
Yeah,
too
it's
far with
it's
the change.
the setting, the timeline hasn't changed, so we've essentially rebooting the same timeline over once again with a few changes. We've added some new player races, that sort of thing, to keep folks interested. So there are definitely some changes, but overall it's the same setting as you would be familiar with in the Scarlands. You'll recognize a lot of places. All the places are the same. The essentials are the same, but you're going to notice that there's some new stuff that wasn't there before, or races that were typically just enemies from the monster manual before that are now player races that you can play, that sort of thing. So it's essentially what you know, but with some new cool stuff added in, or I'd like to think it's cool stuff anyway. It's fun for me.
And I think I don't think I'm telling tales out of school here to say that we've been discussing with Stuart, who actually ran the Kickstarter and will probably run this next one, that at some point we want to do a new creature collection book because the first ones were so great, and run those over Kickstarter and play with that a little bit more in the format of, hey, would you like this monster or this monster? And let the backers in the community kind of let us know what they want to see in it a little bit more.
I think there will be some key monsters that we
We
sort
gotta
of agree
have.
are like, these are the ones we have to include no matter what, and then we'll maybe have a list of other options and let people vote on that to see what ends up in it.
Is the Mythor Golem going to be in there? Because that was,
I think I have to put that in.
yeah. Because that was like, when I first read that.
It's a monster and a setting element.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as the carnival crew's there, we're happy.
I'm sorry?
The carnival crew?
Oh, yes. Well, so this first book, the player's guide, that's pretty much done now, ready to go. The Pathfinder version is through layout. I have the first galleys, which I have to go over now. The 5e version should be to layout by the end of this month. No promises, but I think it'll be there by the end of this month.
It's Gelsbad.
Yes, it's Gelsbad. It focuses on the main continent of Gelsbad, which is kind of what we did the original Scarlands as well, and then assuming there's enough interest, we'll branch out and take a look at some of the other parts of the world as well, Termana and whatnot.
There's also, coming out of the Kickstarter, there's also a new piece of fiction from Richard Lee Byers.
That's right, yes.
That's already gotten to backers, I believe.
Yeah, it's out already, and you can get that.
So,
You can download that as well from Factory.
yeah.
Yep. What was it called? Death in the Walled Warren, I think?
Walled War.
Walled Warren.
Yeah. It's hard for me to say.
Yes, the Walled Warren.
Yeah, Richard only had to write it, he didn't have to say it out loud. Okay, and then we have Trinity Continuum. Would you say anything about it? Or?
Sure. Rich has mentioned a few times that because it's a continuum now, we're not just limited to the three main time periods. I mean, those are always going to be the tentpoles of the system, Aeon, Aberrant, and Adventure. But we are extending past that and beyond that. The ones we have announced so far, we're doing, I mean, this is still all tentative, but Aegis, which is set in ancient Greece, because if you guys who read Adventure remember, Dr. Cremor sent a journal entry saying, I think heroes of this sort might have always existed, like what if what we now call mesmerists were once called sorcerers? What if what we now call daredevils were once the heroes? And what if stalwarts were the gods? So I figured, that sounds cool, why not write that? So that's what I'm doing. Another one we're doing is called Anima, which is set in 2084. So that's just after the Aberrant War has ended, about 20 years after, but it's before Scions have showed up. And that sort of references a couple of other properties. It's also set in 2084, like Total Recall and the Remember Me video game that came out a few years ago. So there's a strong emphasis on memory tech and questions of identity and what might happen if, say, a Nova got hold of those sorts of implants and turned you into a cultist. And as far as they're concerned, you've always been that way. So there's some interesting stuff we can do with that particular set.
I think that's the thing to point out is that when we talk about a continuum, we're going to function as if these things kind of occur in this sequentially in this line of stuff. But that doesn't mean you have to do that. And the idea is that these things can come in and out depending on how you want to play it. So
right.
You may decide you never want to have a pulp. I don't know why you would, but a pulp adventure era, and so it goes right from Aegis right into Aberrant. And so that has a different kind of flavor because then your mind frame is, well, those were the superheroes back then, and now we have Aberrant, versus the sort of the interstitial area of pulp adventure era, where you're sort of seeing a little bit slower evolution into that episode.
So you might have a different origin for the Aeon Society or not have them at all.
Right. So it'll enable that. We're gonna have, like I said, we're gonna work off the idea that this whole thing works. And when I say enable, it's not just like a sandboxy sort of toolkit sort of thing, but the way the setting actually works is those things are always going to be kind of, not everybody remembers everything the same way.
Yeah, explicitly the setting is like, it is an entire tree of timelines. We're sort of focusing on one main branch, but that's not to say the rest isn't there.
Somebody said, well, if you could do adventure, are you going to do like a real serious Hollow Earth sort of thing? That may have been Jeff Combos actually, and it's like that would be really, really awesome. But then, what do you do when these intelligent gorilla cities and stuff like that? Do they really exist? Like, do people in the Aberrant world look back on that and go, remember when there used to be the intelligent gorilla city in the Hollow Earth? And the thing is they may not actually remember that. That may have existed.
Or that may have been like a temporarily merged timeline or
right.
something.
So we're going to play around with the idea of having these genre.
So it's not just like a narrative, hey, you can run the game the way you want, but we're saying, like, this is the way the universe actually works.
And then I think another thing when we've talked about, and the Storypath lends itself to as well, is the idea that in the Trinity universe, if you take action, if you do things, if you strive for the things you believe in, the universe actually enables you to do things you shouldn't be able to do.
You are a hero in the system.
Or a villain.
Well, I mean, yes. I'm using hero more expensively.
A protagonist.
Yeah, you're a protagonist.
That's defensive. But yeah, so that's kind of the way that it's set up. World of Darkness kind of assumes the other way, right? Like, no matter what you do, you're screwed. And this is not necessarily the world of brightness, but it definitely is a world of a setting that kind of encourages it. And that's a genre thing. Why the heck does every cop or private eye on any of the TV shows from the 70s all the way up till now pull up and get into the parking spot right in front of the place it needs to go?
Because that's the way the universe
I can't even
works.
find a parking spot in a 9th-floor garage. This guy just drives right up and parks right in front, never gets a ticket. Because he needs to get there, and the universe allows that.
If I may for a second.
Oh, absolutely.
There's been a lot of questions online about like, so are talents / daredevils in the core book going to be, are they going to be like probability manipulators in setting, or are they going to be just like lucky and exceptional humans?
Yes.
And it's like, I've been hesitant to like answer their question directly, but it's like, because of the way the universe works, they can be both, because everyone can do that.
Yeah,
technically.
everyone sort of manipulates probability and fortune on a lesser level, but talents are slightly better at it than
Yeah,
everyone else.
so they are superhuman, and it's like, well, no, because everyone does this, they just do it a little bit more. It's
Yeah.
like, well,
So they're sort of superhuman in the way that like a concert pianist is a superhuman piano player, I guess.
Or you look at the moments, the stereotypical moment of the mother lifting the car off of the child, sort of thing like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
like
you shouldn't be able to do that, but we know there's examples of that sort of thing.
because of that, so the universe kind of rearranges itself to, depending on your willpower or your luck or whatever, just that unconscious application of skill to make things happen. So,
So that's kind of a rundown of where we're at now. Obviously, I keep stressing because I want you all to come to the Kickstarter for Scion. We're going to be doing that at the end of August. Trinity is at a pace that's sort of back a step from where Scion is. It's not a question of, oh my God, we don't love Trinity as much as Scion. It was just that with Neall having developed the Storypath system, he was in a
Better position.
more of an organic position to just roll right into Scion. Ian and John Sneed, who was doing Trinity Continuum Aeon, needed to figure out how does that work with their stuff. It wasn't as organic.
Trinity is also Trinity is also basically like almost like two separate games in a way, because you've got the Continuum core, you've got all the talents in there, like and they're able to do stuff, and then you have the Scions in Aeon, and in a way, you know, they're two separate but very complementary games. Where Scion, we have the ability to play supernatural creatures in Origins, like baby satyrs and baby kitsune and that sort of thing, and pre-visitation Scions, but the name of the game is Scion, so they are really taking a very much a back seat to the main show in Hero. So we were able to get one of them out, you know,
Right.
faster than two being developed simultaneously.
And that's the thing about it, is that previously Scion, you know, was hero, demigod, and god. Now we've added a sort of beginning, which strangely enough is called Origin, that will give you the base setup for it, get you started with it, pre-visitation. So hero starts when you can visit.
Yeah, and Hero itself has a character generation in it if you just want to start a hero, which I expect most people will, because again, it's, you know, you have the option and the ability to create characters at the Origin level if you want to play an urban fantasy. But the main purpose of the book is to mostly just have a setting and system, and then it's like, here are the pantheons in Hero, and that's what we got.
Okay, so questions, guys? Questions?
Will you require Origin to play, or will Hero have all of the system in as well?
You will require Origins to play. It will have the base system and probably a good chunk of the base setting within it. It's a similar structure to the first edition of the Chronicles of Darkness, what was that at the time called the New World of Darkness, where you had the base core book and then you had Vampire the Requiem. And so that's sort of the same structure it is. Origins and Hero are coming at the same time. And Origins is going to be a much slimmer, much trimmer book. And much more pointy, like here's the setting, here's that, and then here's Hero. On the plus side, because we don't have to put the full system in Hero, we have a lot more room for pantheons, we have a lot more room for relics, we have a lot more room to expand a lot of stuff. and really make it big and juicy. And if, you know, in the future we wanted to make a different game in the Scion universe, you would just need Origins and that thing to play rather than Origins and Hero. You know, what can we make? You know, stuff.
There's a lot that's contained within world mythology, so
Yeah. Yes.
First edition, as far as setting goes, it was a little bit vague at times. How will the setting be different?
Well, Rich used the World of Brightness to kind of not what he said it and then he demurred in his Rich Thomas way to describe.
Threw it out there
Trinity.
and then I ducked away.
Yeah, and he ducked away. But I'm not going to duck away from calling Scion almost like a world of myth. And the base premise of it is that all myths are real, and that and we take that very seriously, and that has a lot of like very subtle but kind of profound impacts on the setting. Like today, if you went to someone who worships the theoi, the Greek and Roman gods, they are what's called a Hellenic Reconstructionist, because we've studied the ancient Greek religion over the years, and then they've kind of reconstructed it, and now you worship Zeus Pater, and that sort of thing. And in Scion, those religions never went away. They got trampled down, and they got tamped down a lot, and monotheism still exists as a force in the world, but the gods never went away, in a way. They still walk the earth, even if they're a lot quieter about it sometimes than they were in ancient times. And so there is an unbroken, a lot of these religions, and they are religions, make no about it. We call them myth, but people believe these things. They fought and died and bled for them and sacrificed for them. And a lot of them are just unbroken back to when they were originally founded and created. And the gods, a lot of the gods have stepped away for various reasons, but they are still active. They still keep a toe in. And sometimes they rely on Scions to be like, all right, now it's your turn to really make us, bring us back to the stage. Go on, kid, do a good job at this. Not that I know what that feels like at all. Yeah,
Good
thanks.
job, kid.
and now that they're doing the American Gods series, probably going to get a lot of attention.
Oh yeah, I certainly hope so. We looked at a lot of sources.
No gaming lawyers will be fun.
Yeah, actually, one of our writers knows someone very, very closely who was consulted as an expert for it, and talked about Scion a little bit about that and how we were doing it. Mythological accuracy and cultural and religious respect were huge parts of this fourth edition. Ultimately, we're making a game. We're making an action game, and we're making a game where all myths are real. So you can't say, this was that and this was this definitively. But there are contradictory myths within the world, and they exist simultaneously. And the world is both Ranyi and Poppy, and it's also was made by a wagtail swimming around in an infinite ocean. But also Ra brought the world out of the infinite ocean itself. And these things can be true simultaneously, but that doesn't make them, that doesn't mean that they're contradictory. So, yeah, but in terms of setting, what's changed since first edition as well? Titan is now more of a political term than a different class of entity. Titans are deities, but they have a disregard for humanity, and they are not focused on them in a way. They cannot relate. There's no empathy. Even the worst of gods, like Sobek, let's say. Sobek's a jerk. He's a crocodile who eats mice. But he loves his kids. And Sobek is actually known as like protector of youth in Egyptian. And they have an essential empathy towards humanity that Titans simply don't have. So the Titan-God conflict is in a ways a lot more complex and a lot more of a Cold War in certain areas than it is just a straight up big old Titanomachy. But that is still very much looming on the horizon because more and more Titans and more Titan spawn are starting to break loose of the various prisons they're in, rather than all of them being released from Tartarus, as it was in first edition. And it's slowly starting to ramp up to the fact that a lot of Pantheons are being on, okay, this is actually a big problem. Although some Pantheons still have their heads in the sand. about it. And so it's a bit more of a modern take rather than the straight up one together of first edition. Not that that was a bad take, because first edition was meant to be a focused singular line. And if you're doing that, it's important to kind of regard it very upfront and very directly. But second edition is a full-on infinite line. We're looking at many different supplements, many different ways to branch it out, and it just needed that kind of complexity. So right in from the basic.
And to kind of underline the thing, there is an assumed base setting that Neil touched on there, versus it wasn't a vague setting for Scion 1. There was not supposed to be one, like, at all. Things kind of started to happen because of the way things interrelated, but we weren't providing anybody with a setting. Put it in however you need to put it in. In this case, we thought, there's certain kinds of stories that make sense, there's certain ways that things interact. Let's just say that's how this is functioning.
Yeah.
Right now it's called The World, but I keep trying to figure out if we can come up with a little catchier word.
Well, you should have done that in first edition, because that's what it's called in first edition.
I know, it was done.
Scientopia.
Scientopia.
There you go.
That's pretty Greek, though.
Yeah. So, other questions?
It's kind of a two-part question for both major game lines here for Scion and Aberrant. I have a lot of characters or players. Sorry, Scarlands.
Fully expected that.
Just go to sleep.
I have a lot of players who like both lines a lot, except for especially like Scion, the first series. There's a lot of Scions that were depicted as non-generically human-looking. So I was just wondering if you're gonna have an incorporated system followed by like with Aberrant. In order to get that, you really have to like taint yourself right the heck up and be on that nice edge. Is there going to be a way to play a very non-human looking character without really messing your character up as far as the system goes?
In Scion, yes. After you get your third dot, for every third dot of legend you get this thing that's called an omen. And it's this like supernatural effect that kind of follows you around. And one of the characters on the back here, you can actually see her, Annie X. She has 4 blue arms because of her spiritual purity as she's increasing in legend, and she just has those. They're just there. They don't give you any particular system effect, so she can't make like twice the amount of attacks everyone can because she has another pair of arms. She still has to like think about them and control them, but she can do neat little tricks in them, like as you can kind of see from there, because of her spiritual purity. Omens also allow you to tell who's a god and who's not. Because even if a god's in disguise, Odin doesn't have an eye, and ravens are kind of following him around, and stuff sort of happens, and that's what omens are. But a lot of the scions with the supernatural effects in second edition, those are explained by omens. As they increase in legend, they get these like semi-covert and semi-overt supernatural effects that sometimes they can hide, but often just sort of come out. And because it's an assumed setting, people can be kind of freaked out by that, but sometimes they're like, oh cool, that's so-and-so, or that's whomever. And if you pay attention to things at all, you'll be able to tell like, oh shit, that's Odin. I better be nice to him. And if you meet a beggar on the road in Scion, you should probably treat them pretty nicely. I'll just put it that way. Or kill them. Or kill them. Yeah.
Now, in terms of Aberrant, it's still pretty early for Aberrant. I mean, we're not even done Aeon yet, and then Aberrant comes after that. But we have been thinking a lot about things like Chrysalis and what used to be called Taint, and how all that stuff interrelates and how that changes your form. It's not going to be exactly the way it was in the first edition, but there's some interesting things we can do there.
We're going to call it something different than Taint in this edition?
It's not called Taint anymore.
Oh, yeah, because my wife Googles every time.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of people.
That's why we're not calling it Taint anymore.
Oh.
It's called, we have published this in some of the documents online. It's generically called Quantum Flux, but by the Trinity timeline, a lot of people just sort of call it Corruption instead.
Cool.
Sure.
This is a Scarlands question.
Sure.
Oh.
You said that things were going to be released. Is it going to be the same timeline, 150 years, or is it going to be advanced by 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30 years past that
No,
point?
we talked about that quite a bit in the beginning. I think we ultimately decided that we just wanted to reboot the setting where it was from before. So it's at the same timeline, 150 years after, roughly 150 years after the Divine War ended.
Okay.
Some folks are going to want to use their old campaigns. That was the real issue with it. It's like if you advance the stuff and your campaign isn't capable of advancing to that, then I guess you do. And people have emotional connections to the storylines that they had, characters especially that they had. So we want to let people be able to do that and then tweak them to fit with the.
Yeah, it'd be easy enough the way the system, the way the book's designed for people who want to pick up an old campaign that had advanced 25 years or something to just kind of run with that, and it wouldn't be a difficult change.
Okay.
Most of the major political structures are the same as what they were in the older books.
Sure.
So it would be easy to just assume that those same changes have happened in your game.
I've got two questions. With Scarlands, I remember there were other creature collections, there was the relics and rituals. Are you going to draw on any of those source books?
Yeah, absolutely. And in this first book, we've done that already. So we've sort of cherry-picked some of the stuff. I guess I mostly did that, but with the help from a few other folks, but kind of cherry-picked a lot of the stuff that we thought was sort of the strongest and most interesting material and sort of absorbed that all into one kind of nice package for this first book.
And in fact, one thing we didn't talk about during the Kickstarter timeframe that we have done, since we've gone into layout and stuff, is added a monster section to the main book itself.
Yep.
To give people a jump to it. Some of the classics,
Right. And so that's one thing that had come up a number of times is in the older Scarlet stuff, we had the Titan spawn, right? The sort of enemy that's always there. But it was pretty nebulous, really, and intentionally so in a lot of ways. But we have defined that a little more clearly. So the appendix that we've added to this new book is literally about 60 Titan spawn. So it's just monsters that are officially have that subtype, and that affects certain spells and class abilities that are more effective against that particular type.
And then with Scion, I played the first edition, and I remember with some of the supplements they added over there, things you could possibly take on the as well.
Yeah, we're going to have 10 Pantheons in Hero, one of which is a reimagining of an old one. A lot of them have changed very subtly.
Yeah, I saw
like the Dodecatheon are now the Theoi, which is the Greek term for just gods. The Loa are the Orisha, which are a related but kind of separate take on the religion. That's a little bit more African, but still very Afro-Atlantic in flavor. And their backstory, and I remember reading the in-character fiction that my author gave me, and it's from one of the gods, and he's talking about, in that actual religion, in that actual culture and belief, there were these old gods in Yoruba land, and then there was the huge migration over to the Americas because of the slave trade. These people were uprooted, and in that culture and in that religion, and of course in the backstory of Scion, the gods made a decision, well, if we stick with our people, we're going to be fate-bound to them, and we may be changed in ways that we don't like, and they decided, no, we're going to stick with our people, and we're going to choose to change. We're not going to abandon our people. And to me, that's so incredibly powerful that I loved it. And I was like, we have to have the Orisha, we have to have them do that. And the Loa are going to kind of be a subsect of that, a sub-thing of that. So we have all 9 Pantheons from the original Scion core book and from the Scion Companion coming back. So it's going to be the 6 original with the Orisha replacing the Loa, plus the Tuatha De Danann, the Deva, and the third one? The Shen, the celestial bureaucracy of the Chinese. And then we have a 10th new one, which is the Manitau. A lot of fans were always calling since first edition for a Native American pantheon, but there's so many mythologies in the Native American pantheon. It's like if I smoosh them all together, not only is that me kind of stepping on a living religion and a living people, but there's so much richness in there that we could package up later and sell for money. And we're just like, Neal, you mean be creatively invested in it and really tell these stories? And I was like, yeah, but also money. It's the northeastern, it's the Manitau, the northeastern Algonquian pantheon, which also is kind of addressed by the Mohawk and a lot of the Iroquois nations around there. So they're going to be the first one, but we're looking at doing Navajo and Lakota at certain points later. in different parts of the issue. And my native writer, who actually wrote for it, actually turned to me and he was like, I really loved it how first edition, I really loved how it went, but I never felt like there was someone who looked like me in there, and now I do. And I'm like, that's exactly what we're looking for.
So we have time for one question about Scion or two questions about something else.
I have one very quick question and one longer question. Quick question: will Aberrant take place in the distant future of 2008?
No, it will not. Aberrant was originally...
It's not a retro game.
Aberrant was originally published in '99 and set in the near future, which was 2008, and obviously we're a little bit past that now. So what we're going to do is it's now set in 2028.
Okay. Well, and my longer question is, how specific would the powers of Scion be? Like in Exalted, I can be the best swordsman or the best